everyone, and welcome to another episode of Real Conspiracies. I'm your host, PJ Williams, and this is the podcast where we dive into the occult symbolism and hidden messages in your favorite movies and video games. And joining me on this podcast for the second or third time, third time, that's right, is my sister, Elise Williams. Mom called me, said I have to play nice, so we're bringing you back.
I was crying. She didn't want to hear it anymore.
No, you're a guest favorite. Obviously, we did Constantine, we did the Lego movie. They were great episodes. People loved them. So welcome back. How you doing, Elise?
Thank you. I'm good. I'm excited to be back, and I'm super stoked because we're doing something totally different than those two movies, which is not just, I won't spoil it yet, but I'm excited to talk about something a little different with these movies, and I'm geeked that we get to do it.
It's so funny because one of the questions, I've been asked this a few times. It's like, are you going to ruin every movie for me? Are they all bad? Are they all evil?
All awful.
Are they all awful and evil and, you know, whatever? And are you going to do anything more positive? And this is the answer to that. Like, one of the things that I kind of set out to do in the beginning of this is some movies I think are really good for the topics that they dive into and the conversations they lead to, but they're not necessarily all super evil Freemasonic messaging. And I know that's going to trigger some people like, oh, if you look hard enough, it's in every single thing ever. And Hollywood does do that a little bit everywhere. I'm not going to say they don't. But this movie is just overwhelmingly positive of a message, in my belief, but it leads into some really great topics and stuff that I've covered not only on Real Conspiracies before, but stuff that I have recently covered on Dark Ocean, which is the reason I wanted to do this episode. Jesse came on. We did an episode called Harbingers of Doom, and I'll be referencing that episode later on. So I'll link it in the description if people want to watch it. But that episode led me into this. And then as I did the research for this, I didn't realize just how correct my memory of this was, that there was even more linking it to that research than I had originally thought. So this will be a good one.
This is going to be great. And if you haven't listened to Dark Ocean yet, what are you doing? Like, after this, obviously finish this, but then go catch up. Come on.
Yeah, catch up on it. Give me a follow, Rumble, all that stuff's linked in the description. I think you're the one who introduced me to this movie years ago.
I think so.
Did you, we'll get into what it is in a second, but did you read the book before you watched the movie, or did you just find the movie randomly somehow, or how'd that work?
No, I found so I read a few of Dean Koontz's books, not this one, but I found that he had this one out, watched it, loved it, thought you would really enjoy it too, for all the reasons we'll get into. But no, I didn't read the book. I know you did.
I've read the first 3 books, but not till after I watched this movie.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And
so
that's kind of what's cool about this too, is the movie leading you into the books. I think there's 8 in total.
It's either 7 or 8, and I think they're all out now.
Yep.
I think they are. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
But yeah, no, I like some Dean Koontz stuff. He's not my favorite author of all time, but he's done a couple that I really like. The first Odd Thomas is actually my favorite Dean Koontz book that I've read. I know it's a little bit more young adult, and so is the movie, but overwhelmingly quirky and fun and good time. So people don't know this is, and why the reason I even asked that, because this movie almost nobody had seen, really. That's kind of the reason I asked that.
Nobody.
For people who don't know this is a 2013 American mystery thriller film. I'd call it a supernatural film as well. It was directed by Stephen Summers, who you might be familiar with. He directed The Mummy, which I recently did an episode on. And he also helped write the screenplay along with Dean Koontz, who obviously wrote the book, and then Stephen Summers turned it into a screenplay. And again, it's based on the novel Odd Thomas by Dean Koontz. It stars Anton Yelchin, Willem Dafoe, and Addison Timlin. At least 2 of the 3 are knockout hits in this. Not that Addison Timlin wasn't good. But rewatching it, I didn't like her as much as I remembered. I think I liked the character Stormy Llewellyn a lot. Yes. And I liked her in the book, and I liked her dialogue, and I thought Addison Timlin was, cute and quirky and all of that stuff, but when I rewatched it, it wasn't her performance wasn't as great as I remembered, especially compared to how great Anton Yelchin and Willem Dafoe are in this movie.
That's what I was going to say. She's up against 2 strong characters, or strong
2 acting
actors.
Powerhouses. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So she didn't stand a chance anyway.
But she does do a good job, I think, for the most part. No, it's weird because in my mind, I'll picture a certain actor or an actress when I read a book, and then I'll see them in the movie. The weirdest one for me ever, I've told this story before, but I read the book Holes, and they described this portly kid, who's kind of a nerd, and then I was like, for some reason, had Shia LaBeouf in my head. It doesn't fit the role at all according to the book. Then the movie's cast a few years later, and it's Shia LaBeouf. And I was like, that was a weird coincidence. But according to Dean Koontz, he never had anyone in mind for Todd Thomas other than Anton Yelchin. That was who he wanted to see.
That's so cool.
Or maybe it was Stephen Summers. Sorry, I should say Stephen Summers always had Anton Yelchin in mind for Odd Thomas.
He's so perfect
he didn't even
in this role.
try anybody else out. Yeah.
What? Yeah, no. If he was willing to do it, which obviously he was, he just nailed this character.
Willem Dafoe was originally supposed to be played by Tim Robinson, which I would not have liked as much. Not that I don't like Tim Robinson, but Willem Dafoe is kind of perfect. I can't think of who that is. Shawshank Redemption.
Oh, yeah.
Mystic River.
Willem Dafoe's always better. Willem
Dafoe was great in this. The plot summary, according to IMDb, reads, a small-town fry cook, Odd Thomas, is an ordinary guy with a paranormal secret. He sees dead people everywhere. When a creepy stranger shows up with an entourage of ghostly bodaks, predators who feed on pain and pretend mass destruction, Odd knows that his town is in serious trouble. Teaming up with his sweetheart Stormy and the local sheriff, Odd plunges into an epic battle of good versus evil to try to stop a disaster of apocalyptic proportions, which I think is a really well done summary. Yeah, it is a really good summary. And I'm going to say this here. We're definitely going to spoil this movie. I would highly suggest more than almost any episode that I've done, because the twist ending, I shouldn't call it a twist ending. The ending of this movie, I do not want to spoil for you if you haven't seen it. I also extremely highly recommend this movie, despite the negative reviews we'll get into in a minute. So before we spoil this, I just want to urge people to actually watch this movie. I've loved this movie since I first saw it. So, but this movie didn't do super well. It actually did incredibly badly for reasons that I'll talk about in a minute. It took me a minute to find the budget, but I recently got IMDb Pro, which is kind of nice. And you can find out more info about movies than you can without it, I guess, including budget stuff. So the movie had a budget of $27 million. I think that was the only place I could find that. Finding details on how much it made was a little weird. I'm still not sure the number I have is actually correct, but details on the production of this, of anything, of reviews, are really scarce. This movie has almost nothing really written online about it, other than more recently people have discovered this and called it a hidden gem. It's got a cult following now. So all the articles you'll see on it are the last 2 years, really.
Which is crazy, because with 2013, this movie
2013 is when it came out. Yeah.
And that it's becoming popular now, and it's not even because of Anton Yelchin's death. That was 2016.
Right.
So why? I mean, yay, because this movie's wonderful.
It's just kind of like people are discovering that they missed this movie it wasn't even available to people. We'll get into that in a second. But they missed out on this movie, and then the critics hated it, and then people are going, wait a second, I actually really like this movie. So, like I said, it was hard to find stuff on this, but IMDb says one of the little few details it gives about this movie. It says that filming was stopped at one point for several weeks due to financial problems. It doesn't go into it. I couldn't really find out more about it. But what I did find is that when this movie was finished in 2011, it ended up sitting on the shelf for about 2 years because of a lawsuit. And the lawsuit was basically the producers of the movie sued this company called Outsource Media Group, or OMG. And they sued them for failing to provide $25 million that they promised to use to promote the film, and an additional $10 million to help pay back loans they took out to make the film. So basically, Outsourced Media Group greenlit this, promised them $35 million, and $25 million of that was in promotion. And if you've seen the episode I did on the show about Smile, we kind of got into how important promotion is in the budget of a film. Smile's not the greatest movie ever made, but it had an incredibly well done promotion behind it. And this movie had a $0 promotion budget. It just didn't get promoted, right? Because $25 million that was allocated just for promotion is just completely not there. Just they didn't have it.
It's a good chunk of change. And the fact that you've even heard of it, if anybody besides the two of us has heard of this movie at this point.
I think people have heard about it because it went to Netflix and Amazon. It was just a cheap movie they could throw on Netflix and Amazon and stuff like that. So eventually streaming stuff, people picked up on it. But yeah, no one had heard of this movie till years after it came out, really. I think you first told me about it 3 or 4 years ago. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's been out for 11 years. It was done 13 years ago. So But yeah, so without any promotion for the film, it finally released in 2013 in the Philippines on 35 screens.
That's
35 screens in the Philippines. That's what it gets, after it comes out. Again, starring Willem Dafoe and Anton Yelchin, directed by Steven Sommers, who directed Van Helsing and directed The Mummy, Deep Rising.
big deals.
All these people are pretty big deals,
Yeah.
Then it did okay, I guess, in Finland or in the Philippines, and it went to Finland on 31 screens. Then the next
why not?
year, then the next year in 2014, February 2014, it finally makes an American release. This is what I was saying I couldn't find a lot of details on. I couldn't find how many screens, how much money it made. The closest thing I could find was that on I think IMDb and Wikipedia both listed it making about $1.1 million worldwide.
Oh, that's painful.
With a $27 million budget. It made just over $1 million, but it probably screened on less than 100 screens worldwide.
Jeez.
I mean, again, it might be more than that. I have no idea how many American screens it got. It was hard to find, but 35 in Finland or Philippines, 31 in Finland, and then an untold number in America.
Right.
Just not didn't do well. It was quickly released on DVD, so you probably found it in the Walmart $5 bin. And then if you've seen it, it's probably because it came to Netflix and Amazon eventually. Yeah. So. Yeah, pretty disappointing start to this film. Rotten Tomatoes gives it a 38%, which is like, oof.
Oh, ow.
Yeah, they give it a really, really low rating, way lower than I would have expected. The site's critical consensus reads, Anton Yelchin is the right man for the title role, but Odd Thomas suffers from a jumbled tone. I want to come back to that, the tone in a minute. I'm going to read these reviews. Because that is the number one complaint other than pacing was tone.
Okay. All right.
Brian Tallarico from RogerEbert.com gave it a 1.5-star rating, calling it, quote, a film that's going through the motions with too little characters, style, or atmosphere to keep it engaging. And Drew Taylor, for the one disagreement I saw from this was Drew Taylor for the IndieWire, who gave this film a B, and he said it's, quote, the best Kuntz adaptation by a fairly considerable margin. When I looked into Kuntz adaptations, though, that's not actually that big of a praise.
Yeah,
I couldn't find any Kuntz books turned into movies that did any good. So it's not really high praise. A B is a lot more accurate for what this movie deserves. Agreed. I'd give it a B+, even though I personally love this movie for all kinds of reasons. Let's talk about tone, though. This is the number one complaint, and I know you had something to say in it. So what are your thoughts on the complaints of tone? Because people say that didn't know if it was dark or serious or a romance or comedy, and I personally liked the juxtaposition between dark noir and kind of this teen love story, silly, quirky love story. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I do too. I like the juxtaposition too. That's a good way to put it. I think they set it up to be this darker, more suspenseful thrill, but the story is really great. And like you said, the end where it gets you and you're just like, it's brilliant. But the love story is super cheesy, but I kind of think like it all balances itself out in this story. And I like that it's not too dark. It's not too light. I thought it was just a really good balance of like the silliness and also because he makes jokes even throughout the film about himself and what he's doing and things. And I don't know, I liked the tone of it personally. But if you're going into it thinking, oh, this is a dark,
I don't know. I think the tone works perfectly for what it is, and what it is a young adult thing, right? Like it's definitely marketed more towards like a high school audience, but I think that actually works in this case. And I also think it works because, and maybe the thing that people didn't like is that Stormy and Odd were too, like, I don't know if too perfect is the right word, but there wasn't any overt conflict, sexuality, and it was a clean movie. It was a very clean movie. I think very little swearing and things like that, but the action kept up there. I don't know. I think pacing is what I would knock it on a little bit. I think that, it could have had a little bit more backstory in the beginning. I liked how it started. I would have liked a little bit more backstory. I would have liked a little bit more depth in the relationship with his mom, which was a big part in the book. And I would have liked a few more scenes with Oz and a little bit there. I feel like it jumps at one point from him hiding the dead body to him rushing to the mall. And then it's just, fast paced for the next 5 minutes before we get to the sadder, more somber ending. That's the only part where the pacing really stuck out to me. Is I was like, oh, okay, we're there now. We're just going right into the climax. Like that I'll say is like the big complaint I had. But it was so true to the book that, and I liked the movie before I read the book. It was so true to the book that I think if they had maybe a bit more budget and they had a bit more time, they could have, filled it out a little bit more. I don't know if they were just trying to keep it to a shorter runtime, because the pacing in the Mummy was a much better pacing.
Great.
From Stephen Sommers, and it had that it slowed down when it needed to, and this movie could have done that a little more.
Yeah, I agree. And the movie was 97 minutes, I think, so it's not like it was already this super long movie.
Some people said it would have made a great TV pilot, and I could see that, but I also like movies better than shows, because I think shows eventually start to lose their steam.
So ridiculous.
Yeah. I mean, I think if they would have added 20 more minutes, they probably could have fixed the pacing issue and given a little bit more backstory.
Yeah.
And one of the backstory things that gets cut out of this that I thought we would talk about is Elvis.
Yeah.
So
sure.
To go into this movie, so how do you want to do this? Because here's the thing I'll say. Sometimes when I do this show, we go through scene by scene. We talk about everything that happens, and that's necessary if there's a lot of symbolism and stuff like that. In this movie, I don't think that's the angle we're going for as much as there's some things in this movie that point out some really interesting topics we're going to get into. But it is about, again, it's about Odd Thomas. He starts off with, seeing a dead girl, stopping a killer, and he works with the cops, and it's got this whole thing. And again, you should go watch it. So we're not going to go through all of that. But one of the things you see early on in the movie is in his apartment, you see a cardboard cutout of Elvis.
Yep.
And this is one of my favorite nods to the book that I understand why it's not in the movie. But for people who have not read the book, Elvis is a ghost that hangs around Odd Thomas for the first 3 books. For the first 3 books, Elvis hangs around. And so the ghosts, the dead, they don't talk in this movie or in the book at all. They can't physically interact unless it's a poltergeist who can do some stuff we can talk about in a minute. But the cardboard cutout of Elvis is great because Elvis, the dead ghost of Elvis, can't get over his mom, and he's hanging around him. and I guess we gotta
story.
Did you haven't read the books? That's right.
No.
So Odd Thomas has this weird relationship with his mom. It's hinted at in the movie, but it's way more in depth in the book. And Elvis has a similar relationship, so I think Odd eventually helps him work through it, and then he goes on to the afterlife in a later book. But Elvis is just always crying over his mom, and he's walking around, and the pool scene in the beginning of the movie, in the book, Elvis is walking on the water and being goofy and distracting Odd the whole time, and
shaking his hips,
stuff like that, right? So they've got this cardboard cutout nod to Elvis, and the reason that I thought this made a great segue into talking about some conspiracy topics here is because this is more fitting in my mind, because I'm not sure. I'm not convinced that Elvis is dead. Let's put it that way. Nope. And there's been this guy making the rounds over the last few years. It's become a really popular conspiracy. And I think for Dark Ocean someday it would be fun to go into the whole theory about how Elvis's gravestone literally says Aaron spelled wrong. Elvis Aaron Presley, his middle name is spelled wrong, and that's kind of where it starts, and there's a whole bunch of other stuff. But I think we may have actually found the guy, or found Elvis
is alive.
Found Elvis himself, and it is a preacher named Bob Joyce. So again, we could go into this in the future deeper, but let's check out this little video that I found about it.
6 undeniable reasons that this man is Elvis Presley. In the realm of captivating mysteries and intriguing coincidences, the question arises, is Bob Joyce, a pastor residing in Arkansas, in fact, the legendary Elvis Presley? The reasons below will definitely convince you. Number 1. When singer Barry Manilow was visiting Bob's church wearing a metallic gold jacket, and Bob said, "I used to own a coat like that." Number 2. The cheekbones, pointy chin, eyebrows, and videos of both scratching their left ears was dominant. Number 3, their height, 6 feet tall, shoe size 11D, singing voice, hairline, facial pores, large hands, slim fingers, build, broken pinky, gestures, pointing a lot, stance, ear size, thick hair, walking gait, musical ability all match. Number 4, Elvis Bob has multiple guitars and pianos. Like the young Elvis, and the same country boy laugh says thang instead of thing. Same laugh and sense of humor, same gentle spirit, same twinkle in his eyes, and the same excitable spirit. Number 5, Elvis was born with a gap between his 2 front teeth, so he asked dentists to hide the gap. He was born with a slight gap between his 2 front teeth, so when he became famous and rich, he had 4 teeth capped to enhance his looks. Now Bob appeared with the original teeth gap. Number 6, their same musical prowess. A talent that flows effortlessly from their fingers.
That's not the best video for that, because I found a video of Bob Joyce and his son at a bar, and his son is like dressed up like Elvis for some reason, and they're singing Elvis songs together.
They're singing one of the hardest songs to duplicate.
And his son, or the one video said it's son. I'm not 100% sure it is, but the Elvis impersonator is singing it okay, and then Bob Joyce is just nailing it. I mean, like no one but Elvis could, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Exactly. So if you guys want to look into Bob Joyce, I highly recommend it. But
the king is alive, and he preaches about the king.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. And what's crazy is the big thing in the conspiracy theory that debunks it is Bob Joyce himself says, well, I'm younger than Elvis. I'm this age or whatever. There's no pictures of Bob Joyce before Elvis's death. There's other things. He was seen at Graceland. He was seen at Elvis's daughter's funeral, even though it was a private family event. It just, the rabbit hole just keeps going, and we can make a whole
Elvis's.
Yeah, his wife is Elvis's ex-girlfriend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Coincidence?
Priscilla Presley has slipped up a couple of times saying that Elvis was still alive. Elvis's daughter has made that same, Freudian slip. And just there's so many things to this.
Yeah.
The rabbit hole goes deep. But the big one is people say that he's younger. And then I found a picture of him. Actually, I don't know if I still have this pulled up. I don't have it pulled up right now. I might put it in post. But it's basically a picture of him with a birthday cake last year that has 88 on it, which would make him the same age as Elvis, who would be 89 this year. So even though he's saying he's younger, his birthday photo says he's not. So there's a whole lot of that. Doesn't everybody have a birthday cake that says the wrong age by like a decade?
Right. Or doesn't everybody lie about their age?
Well, everybody lies about their age, right? I guess.
Yeah. But, I'm PJ's younger sister.
Right. So yes. Yeah, you're my younger sister. I got to keep a straight face when I say that. But.
Don't laugh too hard.
No, I thought it was interesting. I thought I'd bring up the whole Elvis conspiracy.
I like the nod to Elvis in multiple ways in this movie. Like, yes, because there's more of that, like nods to conspiracies, which we'll get into. But.
Yeah, absolutely. Another interesting nod, talking about a dead person in this movie, is that at the tire place in the movie, there's that guy, I can't remember what they call him, but he's missing an arm, and he's like trying to make Odd laugh, and he's waving his arm around, stuff like that. The actor who plays that is Arnold Vosloo, and if I'm pronouncing that wrong, I'm sorry, but he's the guy who plays the mummy. And apparently Arnold Vosloo and the director Summers are like really, really good friends. They talk all the time. So he kind of gave him this funny role playing another dead person in one of his movies. So there's a little nod to the mummy in the movie, which I liked.
I was going to ask you too if that character was in the book or if that was just a random one-off. Okay, it was in the book.
The character's in the book. It goes deeper into the book about how Odd is so normal that he's thinking about upgrading from a fry cook to a tire salesman. Like that's his big goal in life.
I love it.
The movie talks about it a little bit. It goes a lot more into it in the book. And he's like, what about shoes though? Because, everybody's got a car, but every person in a family has 2 feet and they, need multiple pairs of shoes. It's like his big dreams are like the smallest things ever.
He keeps his life very simple.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he says that too in the movie.
Which I like it. It makes him a quirky character and stuff like that. But the big thing, let's get into the real undead issue of this movie, the Bodox. Bodoc is, I wasn't sure if it was made up just for the movie or if it was a real thing. Apparently a Bodoc is a trickster or a boogeyman figure in Gaelic folklore.
Yep.
And in fact, if you go to deankuntz.com and you can read about the characters in his books, he's got this little article here. And this phrase, it's not an article, but these few paragraphs here are directly from the Odd Thomas book. And it says, Bodox. It says, in addition to lingering spirits of the dead, I see one other kind of supernatural entity. I call them Bodox. They are ink black, fluid in shape, with no more substance than shadows. Soundless, as big as an average man, they frequently slink like cats low to the ground. In the folklore of the British Isles, a Bodoc is a vile beast that slithers down chimneys at night and carries off children who misbehave. What I see are neither Bodocs nor tax collectors. They carry away neither misbehaving children nor miscreants. But I have seen them enter houses by chimneys, by keyholes, chinks in the window frames, as protean as smoke, and I have no better name for them. Their infrequent appearance is always reason for alarm. These creatures seem to be spiritual vampires with knowledge of the future. They are drawn to places where violence or fiery catastrophe is destined to erupt, as if they feed on human suffering. A single Bodoc signals impending violence that may be either near or probable or remote and less certain. If they appear in twos or threes, the danger is more immediate. In my experience, when they appear in packs, the pending danger has become imminent peril, and the death of many people are days or hours away. I don't think they know that I can see them, too. If they did know, I believe that they would show me less mercy than mad mullahs show their victims when in a mood to behead and dismember. So this is how he's describing these Bodocs. And what I found about Bodocs, again, he says he doesn't have a better name for it, which is fair because it's not really the same as the Gaelic folklore. The Gaelic folklore generally talks about these things as kind of old men. They're compared to the hag. They seem to be fae type spirits, trickster fae, who are going in and stealing children. I couldn't verify this, but it made me like the tales I was reading about Bodocs reminded me of Rumpelstiltskin.
Yeah.
Like that maybe he was a Bodoc creature or something like that, but that's probably a better way of understanding him. But what was your thoughts on the Bodocs and the representation of this movie? Because I've got more that I want to link it back to in a second.
Sure. I liked the idea of it, and I thought that it was brilliant. So not to jump into probably what you're going to talk about, but just these harbingers, if you will, which you and Jesse talked about recently. But I like that they're like this warning sign, but also they're manipulative. They're still tricksters because
absolutely. They manipulate him throughout the whole movie.
Absolutely. So he's like, oh, they can't know that I know, but they have known this whole time. Again, spoiler alerts everywhere. Go watch the stinking movie. But I like that. I like that they're still tricksters. I like that they're so subtle in that too, because I think that spiritually, that's so important to remember is that some of these things, they are not always so overt. And these... I also made the connection, like they slink around almost like cockroaches, right?
Oh yeah, they show a lot of cockroaches in this film.
They do. So I don't know the connection there, except I just want to touch on that because I think we'll talk about that more in a minute. I don't know. I just liked the concept of these beings on a personal level. I liked how they were portrayed. But.
Yeah, I think they're very interesting. I was listening to a TikToker that I like that was using the imagery from this movie to explain kind of how he believes that networks of demons and things like that like work, like, you know, going around in larger numbers than we think and kind of subtly trickster like influencing events. But what it immediately made me think of, I was doing the research for like I said, the episode I just did for Dark Ocean called Harbingers of Doom. And obviously a Harbinger of Doom is Mothman. And I linked it back to basically folklore about ravens and about crows. And my point at the end of the episode was kind of like, well, look, if we're calling them ravens and crows and things like that in the past, but what we're really talking about is dark, shadowy kind of winged figures that are portending doom, and that you've got, you know, the Native Americans and the Roman or the Greeks and the Hindus and everywhere. But it's the exact same. They're all saying the same thing. They're saying that the reason that they show up is they're portending doom. They don't specifically say they just enjoy it and they want to watch it and whatever, but that seems to it would fit, right? Like it's as good an explanation as anything else. But they're talking about winged, shadowy figures that portend doom, and that Mothman is you know, he doesn't really look like a moth, but that's what we're calling him. We're comparing him to a moth, like I believe other people might compare it to a crow or a raven or something like that. Mothman's been compared to owls and other birds as well, right? Just giant bird, you know, beady red eyes, things like that. So when I read about the Bodox, I think back to Mothman lore for sure. It definitely makes me think that maybe Dean Koontz is drawing from this as an inspiration, or again, that the reason that all of these different cultures have talked about this is because there in fact are shadowy creatures that are sometimes seen that do like to hang out around doom. And I don't know what to make of it other than I think this movie's got as good, the book, movie, whatever, has as good an explanation as anything else, that they enjoy human suffering and they're here to watch. I don't agree with the people who are like, Mothman's here to warn us and he's good, actually. No. I don't buy that for a second.
I don't either. You know, you and Jesse had talked about, and not to spoil that episode, but you talked about how, I think you had mentioned something along the lines of, you know, angels are scary too. Biblically, they tell us like,
be not afraid.
Be not afraid, because it's different. But I think there is like scared, like I've never encountered this kind of
like a wheel within a wheel full of eyes and things like that might actually scare some.
Yes,
instead of malevolent. I mean, Mothman like kills people's dogs and like he's not a good guy.
He's not a good guy,
and he also comes with other demonic happenings, right? Sleep paralysis demons is a thing that happens where Mothman visits. So when you compare it to all that, it's like, yeah, maybe those German miners, you know, escaped the tunnel because they were so scared of Mothman they ran out, but that didn't work for the people in Point Pleasant, and it didn't work for the swine flu, and it didn't work for the Fukushima disaster and other places that Mothman is supposedly pretended doom. And it, like in this movie, right? That's what I liked about it is the German story, the Freiburg Shrieker. They say that Mothman scared them and they ran out of the tunnel. Well, in this movie, Odd is using, or he thinks he is, till he realizes they're kind of tricking him, but he's using his ability to see the Bodox to avoid danger or to help other people avoid danger. So in that way, they don't have to be good. But but seeing them could be a good sign, right? You know, not a good sign. Sorry, a good way to know what's coming.
Prevent.
Or
like he's trying to prevent this,
right?
But and with Mothman, like, do I think that he has any good intentions? No, I think he feeds off the energy of the bad that's happening.
Yeah,
and there's something to that too, where not to get into like energies, but there is something to alien encounters and other supernatural things like this, like Mothman, where they seem to feed off of terror and violence, all of that bad energy, if you will. Again, not to
I think that's exactly I think that's exactly the way to talk about it too. And like beyond that, if you've talked to people who talk about, you know, how demonic oppression presupposes demonic possession. Part of that is terrifying people. You know, I mean, I talked about this with the movie Smile. Like the whole MO of this demon was to make someone terrified enough that they would just give up and accept it, right? So, so this reads like that to me as well. But one of the things that's interesting in the movie is he's not supposed to let the Bodox know that he can see them. And both in the movie and in the book, he gives a story of another guy he ran into who was able to see the Bodox. And in the movie, he says, "Look, if the Bodox see you, they will kill you." And this guy's like, "Well, I just flipped one off last week." Yeah. And so as they're having this conversation, Odd Thomas sees a Bodox possess someone. Again, it's pretty clear that we're talking about demonic entities at this point, right? That he sees him possess someone and then crash the truck into this guy. But the book is slightly different, and I gotta read. Dramatic? No. It's way weirder. It's way weirder. The book is slightly different, and I'm going to read the exact quote. It says, "Minutes after he spoke the word Bodox in my presence, he was crushed to death between a runaway truck and a concrete block wall.
Get out.
I'm not kidding you. That is the exact words from the book. And for people who don't know what we're about to talk about, did that just like blow your freaking mind though?
I have goosebumps and shivers. That's insane. Okay.
So explain to people why that freaked you out. Because of what we're about. Let's go into it. Let's talk about the 27 Club. Yeah.
What a good segue into the 27 Club. So Anton Yelchin died at 27 because his 2015 Jeep Grand Cherokee was supposedly in park, but
became a runaway truck
and pinned him to concrete or brick pillar.
A brick pillar.
For his gate.
Yeah. His mailbox, they say. Yeah. It was his gate and his mailbox. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He apparently, that's what they guess, is that he had the Jeep running, put it in park, got out to grab his mail. And as he was doing that, the Jeep went out of park, which because of a recall or something, I'm just going to say the official story here. Because of a recall, this part malfunctioned and it rolled down the hill and pinned him. And that's how he unfortunately
There's a few things about this that don't make sense. And let's get into it. So, let's talk about this. So,
yes.
He was his driveway does have a slight incline. I've got some pictures here. These come from TMZ. And you can see, this is the gate and this is the concrete or brick pillar that he was crushed up against. There we go. We got a better picture there. What you probably first notice is that it's an automatic gate, that he would have a clicker to open it, and that it appears to be that his mail would have been gotten on the other side.
Yes.
That's what I don't understand about this. So, right, exactly. So you said that, they had to guess, and that's exactly right. I read a lot of articles on this, and they say, well, we assume that he parked his Jeep, he got out, and he went to get his mail, and then his Jeep rolled and crushed him.
Yep.
But TMZ is the only place that reported that there was a camera. It says right here, 27-year-old had a security camera trained at the gate during the time of the accident. But every other article doesn't mention this camera. It doesn't mention anything about this, because my opinion on this is that if we saw the footage, we would know that this, in fact, was not an accident. So let's get a little bit deeper into that. You said that it was a recall, which is true. I'll actually just pull up the actual Google answer here. It says, yes, the 2015 Jeep Grand Cherokee was recalled for a rollaway risk due to a faulty PTU. And if you look deep enough into this, what you'll find is that it wasn't that if you put it in park, it would come out of park, which is what a lot of places falsely reported.
Yes.
It was that it had one of those shifters where you push it forward and it comes back to a central position, and then you have lights, and the lights are, the Prindle, park, reverse, neutral, drive, low. So he would push it forward, it would click, and the green light for park would come on. So this only happened to a few people because they weren't paying attention and they thought they put it into park, but they put it into neutral on accident. So it wasn't that he did put it into park and then it rolled. It's that if this is true, he got out of his car, walked to the gate, had to reach through the gate to get to his mailbox to get his mail out, which is odd, I guess.
Or he opens the gate, gets the mail, closes the gate,
and drives away like a normal person would.
Right.
It's a little odd, right? It's weird. It's weird. And again, the fact that there was footage and yet nobody mentions it, and they're like, well, we're just kind of guessing here based on what we found. That whole thing is super weird to me. But again, there's not like a lot of evidence other than it's just weird. And I want to get into why people are suspicious of this other than just, maybe it's a freak accident. And the first one is that he joined the 27 Club. Anton Yelchin was 27 when he died. And if you read the accounts, this I also found really weird. I looked into this for quite a while. They say that he was crushed to death on June 18th, 2016, and that he failed to show up for a rehearsal or something to do with a movie, that he was working on a project. That's all they called it. Nowhere could I find what project this was. I have a guess, but nowhere did it actually say what he was late for, what movie he was working on. But he was a very on-time person. He was not late to stuff. That's not who he was. His friends thought it was weird, but not weird enough to show up right away. They showed up at 1 a.m, I guess, even though it happened.
I missed that.
They showed up 1 a.m. the next day, and they find him crushed in he died from asphyxia. Basically, his lungs were compressed by the car, and they said he probably would have died within a minute because it had crushed his lungs so bad and hit his head pretty bad. It's pretty brutal, which is also weird. It didn't look like it was that steep of an incline, but I don't know. Whatever.
I thought was weird too.
I don't know. I feel like it'd have to be going. I mean, the weight of it, I guess, but whatever.
Right.
I don't know. Carbon neutral.
It wasn't totally made out of aluminum yet.
Yeah,
so.
I don't know. Anyway, sorry. I'm just speculating here, but he joins the 27 Club. And for people who don't know, the 27 Club is a list. And it is actually, I've got it here. I got a long list. Let's just show this on screen. This is the list. I'm still scrolling of people. It's almost all musicians, but it's not always. There's football players, there's actors, there's poets. There's a lot of famous people. There's even a couple of dictators in here. But it's almost all musicians who have died at the age of 27 in weird circumstances. And if not overtly weird when you look into it. So to just give a few names on this list. First off, one that I didn't know till today was that Benjamin, I don't know how you, whatever, Elvis's grandson.
Oh.
Part of the 27 Club. Didn't know that before. Jim Morrison is part of the 27 Club as well as his girlfriend. Pamela Corson. I didn't know that his girlfriend was.
I knew him, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. He's one of the more famous ones on it. Same as Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, and Robert Johnson, who famously sold his soul to the devil at the crossroads.
Yep.
So you've got all those. Then you've got Kurt Cobain. And I got to point out why some of these are weird. So just quickly, I've covered Kurt Cobain in depth before, but Kurt Cobain was drugged out beyond comprehension. I mean, so much heroin that they said he wouldn't have been able to function, let alone shoot himself in the head, which is what he did, which is another thing that heroin addicts don't do. They overdose on heroin. They don't usually get super high and then, I finally feel good, and then shoot themselves. And if that wasn't weird enough, he left behind a suicide note in his wife's handwriting. And his best friend who was watching over the house, who was showing the investigators around for days, just failed to mention the room that Kurt Cobain likes to hang out in above the garage for 3 days. For 3 days, and then kept calling a company to say, "Hey, can you come put lights in this room above the garage?" Day after day after day until they came and found the body 3 days later. So Kurt Cobain, look, Courtney Love and killed him. That's my honest belief. Richie Edwards, I didn't know this one. He was the guitarist for the Manic Street Preachers. He went missing in 1995. His car was found 2 weeks later. There was never any trace found of him. They just declared him dead. He's part of the 27 Club as well.
Oh.
So there's a lot of weird things. And again, 27 Club would be a future full episode because you could go through this list. I mean, it's crazy. But obviously, when a celebrity dies at 27, you instantly go, well, did he die? Was he sacrificed?
Right.
But you brought up something to me of maybe why he might have been killed because of something he was about to say or do.
Yeah. So I was looking into this because from what I had heard, he was just such a good employee, if you will. He was so good at what he did, and like you said, he was never late to anything.
Everybody liked him.
Everybody
they said he was a
loved
workhorse. He idolized the old movie stars who would do 5-6 movies a year. So he was just set to set. He just lived to make movies, and he was on time. Nobody had a complaint about it. I mean, and again, just from a viewer standpoint, I think he's one of the greatest actors we've had ever. Really, I mean, he died way too young, but amazingly talented actor.
But he was wonderful, exactly. And I was like, was he outspoken about anything? Like, why this guy? And so I'm looking into it. And he was supposed to start production on a movie that he had written, a screenplay that he had written 3 weeks after his death. Like, he was getting prepped. They were already, they had everything set. The screenplay was called Travis, and the character was based off of Travis Bickle from
Taxi Driver.
Taxi Driver. I always want to say Taxi Cab.
No, is it Taxi Cab or just Taxi, the Jimmy Fallon movie? Not that one.
Yeah, that one.
The Robert De Niro classic, which I'm going to do an episode on that here at some point because there's definitely conspiracy stuff related to that.
There too.
They blamed the assassination attempt of Reagan on that movie. Do you know that?
No, I didn't.
The guy, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but the guy who shot Reagan claimed to have been inspired by watching Taxi Driver or whatever. So anyway, Taxi Driver, though, it's a really good movie.
So it was like one of his favorites, one of the first that his parents showed him and got him into film. And so his main character was going to be based off of him. Anyway, the point is the premise, and the only thing I could find was one article. No,
was it the one from IndieWire, but it was just rewritten everywhere?
it was rewritten everywhere. So it was from IndieWire as the first one I found, and then the rest of them all just said the exact same thing, that this was like a neo-noir movie, and it was about an actor and an amateur photographer, which Yelchin was, who followed a girl home and watched her get murdered, and that's it.
That's all it says.
Only details you can find about this screenplay.
And everything, and you're right, I found everybody that quoted it was quoting this one article from IndieWire.
Like a script.
Like some Project Mockingbird stuff.
Exactly.
Same exact
this is what you're allowed to say.
Yeah.
And that is it.
I don't want to cut you off because I don't know if you have more to say about this. What I found about this movie, because the question then becomes, is he confessing something? Is he telling you something about something he saw? Because again, it's about an aspiring actor and a photographer. Anton Yelchin was. You can find a lot of articles that mention this weird period in his 20s where he would hire women off of Craigslist and do these weird photo shoots. And I can't actually show the pictures on the podcast because they're a little pornographic in nature. But what I noticed is a theme, and the theme was weird. It was kind of this BDSM, but all of it was voyeurism. All of it was someone taking pictures from outside of hotel windows of people in weird position.
He's obsessed with it?
Right. So that's my point, is like his art for a long time, I think he was trying to tell this story that he's eventually telling this film. Then you have to ask the question, is the story autobiographical?
Right.
And was he going to say some deep, dark thing that happened in Hollywood that he witnessed, and then he's killed, and it's like, well, it's about a voyeur, saw a woman get killed, but we're not going to go into more detail on that. But he was primed to do this movie. He really wanted to do this movie. He was going to direct it, and everything was ready to go 3 weeks away. And that's the other thing I have to say I keep finding weird. Normally when an actor dies, it's like this was their last film or their last project, and they talk about it. And in this case, every freaking article about his death says he was late to a project. But it's never named, and I find that weird, except this one IndieWire article that names it. And I don't know. There's a whole lot of weirdness around this. There's a lot of weirdness around, again, Odd Thomas, for the fact that I think this movie also was saying things that Hollywood didn't like because they stopped the funding of it. You bashed it in a way that was just completely unfair. Like all the things you could say if you don't like this movie, like a 38% from Rotten Tomatoes is an insult for what this was.
Yeah.
Stephen Sommers never directed another movie after this, ever.
No. And he was talented and successful, obviously.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this one wasn't his fault. Like, if anybody could, you could not blame Stephen Sommers for the failure of this movie. It literally did not get promoted and didn't get put on screen for people to enjoy. So,
and the fact that people now are coming back to it and really enjoying it too.
Reddit's just full of everybody going, how the hell did I not know about this movie?
Exactly.
TikTok's got it all over the place. Like, people are discovering and finding that they love this movie, despite, and that's, again, if you're not reading the reviews that tell you you're supposed to hate it, because I don't know anybody who's seen it who actually hates it. It's the same as The Mummy. I know I just did The Mummy, but like, there was a lot of kind of negative reviews about it, and everybody's like, yeah, but we like this movie. So like, who cares what Roger Ebert thinks,
Which is just good sense anyway. But
yeah, it's good sense.
If he doesn't, odds are it's probably pretty good.
What's funny about him is he's such a liar anyway. I talked about this on a different podcast a long time ago, but he put Alien as one of the movies he hated more than any movie he's ever seen.
That
Alien
was us too.
Yeah. So he hated Alien. And then he's like, now it's on his top 100 best movies of all time because it became popular after. Yeah, now that it's cool to like Alien. But at the time, it was cool to not like it. Yeah. So, this is weird, though. This is weird. I don't know. Did you have. It's a lot of speculation weird. And it's weird, but I don't know.
I know. Well, and, it's like, okay, I could be reaching, I guess, but it's super weird to me that the book has this ending for that character. I still have goosebumps. That's so crazy. And then
the book predicted this, but the movie, I think, predicted another event that was not predicted in the book that we'll talk about at the end of this. But yeah, it's strange stuff. It's
strange. And I think, again, maybe we're reaching, but at the same time, if you know enough about how Hollywood is and acts, and it's all there. Like you said, Project Mockingbird with
all the pieces are there. Every single piece is there that this was not a normal accident.
No,
there was like,
not.
when I looked into that Jeep recall, like 20 people had ever been hurt by this thing because it was like.
I was going to say, nobody died from it.
Only him.
Only a few people were hurt.
Only him. And again, it was like, it wasn't really that it was defective. The recall was just like, hey, we'll just make it so that way if you do this because you're stupid and didn't put it in park, that when you open the door, the car will just put itself in park. Like that was the fix for it. It was just plug it into a computer, do an update, like a patch update. But like usually when there's a recall, it's because a lot of, like, have you ever seen the movie Fight Club? He makes the whole case. He's like, yeah, they don't do recalls unless enough people have died that it becomes a big deal.
Exactly.
And in this case, they say the recall was there, but they like really pushed it through because of Anton Yelchin's death.
Yes.
Makes me kind of suspicious about the whole thing anyway. You know, it's like
his parents sued and got,
because again, it's not an actual default in the product. It's that some people are too stupid to look at the Prindle and know when they put it in park.
Exactly.
Like you could do that with any car.
But the fact that they won and got a bunch of money too, to me, and it never said, or I couldn't find how much, and they donated a bunch, which was great, and all of that. But it's like, here's your hush money. Like, stop.
It feels like it, though.
Pushing this. It does. It did with all of that. So,
and then Hollywood gave him a big bronze statue at the Hollywood Memorial, and
I didn't know that.
There's a documentary made about Anton Yelchin called Love.
Antoshi or Anna.
Yeah, because he was born in
Antosha,
Russia, and I think it's Antasha or whatever. However, his full name, Anton, but he's was born in Russia, moved over here when he was 6 months old, and his full name's like Antansha, I think. So Love Antansha, which I watched little bits and pieces of it. Again, everybody liked this guy, so
just seemed like a decent human being.
His last movie he ever did was Thoroughbreds, which I could do a whole breakdown at some point because that was a weird movie, but he was great in it. It's just a weird movie. You ever see that one?
Nope.
Yeah, I didn't actually like it that much, but
yeah.
So again, back to Odd Thomas a little bit.
Yeah.
One of the other symbolisms, as I brought up, the reason I wanted to do this was the Harbinger's Doom episode that I was researching. In that, I kind of ended it on this positive note where I was like, well, if there's Mothman out there, is there something else out there that maybe is a little bit more benevolent? And I came across this story that in Joplin, Missouri, when the hurricane happened, I didn't even put this in my notes. I think it was 2009. Big hurricane, tornado.
Yes.
Category 5 tornado or EF5 tornado, mile wide, death and destruction. One of the worst. I think it's the 7th deadliest tornado in American history. It was awful. But what was happening, what was coming out of this was that people were seeing kids were being rescued by what they called the butterfly people. Kids who had never met each other all across the city. Same story. Colorful wings. This creature came, shielded me from debris, saved me, wrapped me in their wings, the whole story. And all over Joplin, Missouri to this day, there's butterflies in memorial to the butterfly people. When I watched this movie, I was looking for the Mothman thing. I never expected to see butterfly symbolism. But when we get to a certain scene, you have to remember I always forget this girl's name. You said it to me earlier.
Her real name?
Oh, in the movie.
Stormy?
No, not Stormy.
Viola.
Viola, thank you.
Yeah.
When he goes to Viola's house and he's, saying, hey, death is following you. It wants to take you and it wants to kill you and your girls. He goes upstairs to check on the girls. And the first thing I noticed when he walks in the room is their walls butterflies above them.
Yep.
And I was like, oh, okay. This is after the Joplin, Missouri thing. We've got already what I think are references to Mothman. Then we get the butterfly stuff above it. And then we get this whole thing through the rest of the movie is like there's this butterfly symbolism of protection. And then there's the Bodox or the Mothman, which is crawling over and sniffing the girls. And I thought that would be the only time that we got that symbolism, but it stuck out to me just because of the episode I just recorded.
Yeah.
But I was wrong. It actually comes back in the very end of the movie. And this is where we're going to spoil the really sad part of the movie. Look, you can have shed a single manly tear at the ending of this movie because
you can.
It's okay. But after the whole mall incident happens and Stormy, we find out has been dead this whole time, which was, I watched the movie first. It's the same in the book, but it was a shocker to me. It blew me away when it happened. When Stormy, she goes on to the next life, right? Which is kind of Odd's whole thing with these ghosts. More in the book than the movie that he's trying to help them move on. He's like, hey, look, there's something better beyond this life and you should go into it. And obviously Dean Koontz is Catholic and we can talk about Dean Koontz in a second. But he's kind of like, he's been asked questions about this. And he's like, I don't know if I really believe this, but this idea like of going, lingering here before purgatory, but he gives examples of why he thinks that's possible. And she walks through the window and turns into butterflies. So we get another thing. And if you know the books, she protects Odd in some interesting ways in later books. But that's not it. After she leaves, it pans back and we see that the next to the window is a raven.
Yep.
And I'm just like, I just didn't expect to see the raven and butterfly symbolism so much. But then I noticed that there's more birds in this movie than just that. There's Bob's apartment, just for some reason, is full of freaking birds.
Okay,
no butterflies, but just birds. Let's talk about Bob's apartment. I know we're going all over the place, but that's just the way this episode's going to be.
Well, okay, you said we should do this. Like, should we do this in order?
We're not doing this one linear.
We never do that. Like, that's not going to happen.
We did pretty well with Constantine, I think.
That's true. We did decent. Yeah. And now we've just gone downhill from there. So...
Well, in my opinion, I think everybody should just watch the movie, and then we'll just talk about the things that are in it instead of like giving you the whole plot. But go watch.
There you go. That's it.
Yeah.
That's our plan. So I have to rant. So if nothing else in this is accurate or on purpose, or I think Dean Koontz and Stephen Sommers had a point, and they wanted you to understand this right off the bat. Hell is guarded by birds. It is not Cerberus. It is not Anubis. It's not anything in mythology. It is birds.
This is a personal gripe with you.
No, it's just fact. It's fact.
She's deathly afraid of birds, guys. Just
I
so you know.
hate them.
But there is Cerberus symbolism in this, kind of. It's not three, but there's two Rottweilers literally guarding what Odd himself calls the portal to hell.
Exactly.
In Bob's apartment. So, but I agree. There's birds and Cerberus protecting it. But I thought the bird imagery was interesting. I don't think that he wouldn't have been familiar with crow mythology and things like that, which definitely shows up in this.
There was a raven or a crow on the date book for the 14th.
Good point.
Do you remember that? Yeah.
Yes.
So that was drawn very, like you can see that very easily.
Again, but that would be the mythology that crows portend doom. Yeah.
Yep, exactly. I didn't see any in that room, and nobody breaks down the room full of birds. Okay, so first he walks in and it's frozen, right? And I think this goes along with the energy thing. If you think about that, there's always that story of like when ghosts appear or when something bad is about to happen, it gets cold. Like the energy is sapped out of the room.
Yep.
And so he literally gets hit with this blast of ice and everything's frozen. The birds in the room, the whole room is literally, it looks like Mr. Freeze went in there first and just like blasted everything.
Chill. Yeah. Or whatever he says in that movie.
Best Mr. Freeze is Arnold Schwarzenegger.
For sure.
Fight me, I don't care. But I was trying to like watch, because nobody has broken this down. Nobody did the work for me.
Right.
Dang it. So I'm trying to see what birds are in there. The one that's very distinct, or the two that I think in that room that are very distinct, there's the owl, and I think it's a hawk or maybe an eagle, like a small, I think it's a hawk.
Okay.
Do you remember?
I didn't break this down as well as you did with the birds.
First of all, torture. Second, you're welcome. No. The owl is very distinct, and they make sure you see that one. And then the hawk is right when he enters the room. At first it's frozen and it's white. And then when everything, like he comes back in the room and it's not frozen, it's back to normal. The hawk is black and normal. And I don't know if there's anything to that either.
Owls are related to Minerva as well as, Bohemian Grove and other like satanic cult stuff too. So.
Oh, owls big time. There's
a whole lot of symbolism with owls for sure.
There's a whole episode there for Dark Ocean alone. Which
I'm going to do at some point. There's a guy who's really researched owls that I want to get on the show at some point. And I don't just mean owls like,
like he's a bird lover.
Yeah, not like a bird lover, but like the mythology and the stories, the weird supernatural stories that involve owls. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, and it never explains in the book. He just walks into, or in the movie, excuse me, never explains. It's just a room full of birds and there's a portal to hell. And I'm like, amen, brother. That's enough right there. But I think the fact that it is an owl and a raven is at the very least a nod to all of the symbolism behind them.
Yeah. I said that, obviously that line I read you from the book kind of threw you because you didn't know that.
Right.
But there's another one that I thought was very interesting, and this doesn't come from the book. This comes directly from the movie, is that this movie ends with Odd showing up at Vegas and he's got work to do. Like it's this thing that they've been hinting at that's going to happen in the whole movie. And in Pico Mundo, he stops what would have been the largest mass shooting in American history. Like that's what happens in the movie. And there's another theory out there that that's actually why the movie didn't, I don't know if I believe that, didn't make theaters and whatever.
Happen.
Yeah, I don't know. That's it's a way that they can explain it away because I know they've done that with other films. It's like, oh well, that movie's going to come out, but a mass shooting just happens. But I couldn't find anything that was BS. Like, I'm calling BS on this too. But that's one of the theories of why this movie got tanked or whatever. But when he goes to Vegas again, he just stopped the biggest mass shooting in American history. What would have been, and then he goes to Vegas with work to do, and the shot shows the skyline of Vegas, but it includes the Mandalay Bay. And it's just weird enough that you would show the Mandalay Bay. And I know you're going to show a little bit of everything, but he shows the Mandalay Bay, and there's some really weird coincidences between what happened there on October 1st, 2017, and this movie, when Stephen Paddock supposedly opened fire on the Route 91 Harvest Music Festival. And, again, biggest shooting in American history. And he was believed to have been working alone, which is kind of the thing in this movie. You think that Bob is working alone, and Bob. Each time there's a twist, it's, there's another guy until there's four, right? Yep. And I've done a whole episode on this in the past and covered this in detail, but one of the greatest documentaries you can watch on this is called Route 91, Uncovering the Cover-Up of the Country Music Mass Shooting in Las Vegas, Nevada. It was made by Mindy Robinson. And I'm just going to play two quick clips of this that I think, again, if you look at this is in the movie saying, here's a big mass shooting, I'm going to go stop another one, shows the Mandalay Bay, and then you get, again, the story's not what we heard. Right. So here is where she shows that not only was there multiple, and again, the documentary's long, but what she shows in this is not only was there reports of shootings all over, and automatic fire shooting all over Vegas at night in different locations, but there was 9 different body cams of the Las Vegas PD an hour or an hour and a half after Stephen Paddock was dead, and you can hear automatic gunfires. Just listen to this.
Over an hour and a half after shooting ceased at the festival, 2 separate volleys of automatic gunfire are not only heard by everyone in the Bellagio area, it's also picked up by at least 9 different police comms.
We are not... Bellagio, PR, a lot of shots being fired. Units, we're getting a 415A now, Bellagio, PR, is hearing a lot of shots being fired.
Yeah. When they breached, they said one SWAT shot him.
Units, we're getting A now, Bellagio, PR, is hearing a lot of shots being fired.
That's a shot. That's a shot.
All right, it keeps going, but I want to pause on that last one because the police in the Mandalay Bay Hotel are saying, SWAT went in and shot this guy. The official story is that Stephen Paddock shot himself. And again, they're saying that's shots. These are never reported in the official story of this ever. That there was multiple shooters that night. There were shooters on the other end of Vegas with automatic gunfire, the whole thing. It's a huge deal. But again, it just reminded me of the movie that, again, it was deeper than people thought. It was a conspiracy, right? And the conspiracy was pulled off in part by the police, which, if you know anything about this story, they were doing active shooter drills that day, which delayed the response, was another part of...
Man, that sounds familiar.
Right, yeah.
Running drills.
Sounds very familiar.
Familiar.
But the weirdest connection between this and the movie is that multiple people reported that there was someone running up to the music festival warning people that this was about to happen.
There are multiple people stating that there was a lady toward the beginning of the evening who had made her way to the stage warning people we were all going to die. Why has she not been mentioned by authorities? Every single survivor I have talked to also remembers multiple shooters, and at least one from the ground.
Yeah, so it's just crazy. Again, someone saying, hey, something bad's going to happen
is still
here.
Alive.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, well, that's another. I mean, we're not going to do a whole episode on it right now, but multiple people who said things that the police did not like, who were witnesses, died in suspicious circumstances. I think 9 that I covered in the past. So that's they killed people to cover this up is my point. So, again, just seeing that shot of the Mandalay Bay and knowing what happens in this movie and then seeing that on top of everything else we covered. Again, the movie itself, it's a very clear good versus bad movie. It's one I highly recommend. It's written by a Christian author. Yeah. Look, I don't know what happened to Stephen Sommers, but he never made a movie after this. The last thing on the internet I could find of him is him teaching a class at a Christian school. So I'm thinking that, the reason this movie tanked in part was because it was just too overtly good versus evil, and good was on the side of the Christian character fighting literal Satanists. I read a lot of articles that were like, well, Satanists don't commit crimes and they're not bad, and this movie's so dumb because it says Satanists are evil, and it's like, I don't know. I don't want to tell you. It's just the most obvious good versus bad story out there. I loved it. But you did some research on Dean Koontz. Do you have anything you wanted to bring up about? Because we both watched that interview with him. I know you want to talk about that a little bit.
I just wanted to say, I didn't realize he was Catholic. I didn't realize he was a Christian author. And I loved his approach to everything. And so it does make me think, especially if he worked closely with Stephen Sommers. And it was said that Dean Koontz did like this movie.
He loved this movie. He said he was thrilled by it.
Yes. So I love that. I don't know. I guess first and foremost, how refreshing to hey, here's a movie that's saying exactly what you think it's saying. Yeah. And he is that guy. He very, very strong Christian faith. And of course I'm blanking on what I was going to say about him, except just there's a lot of connections between his life and Odd's life, which I find interesting. And I think it's interesting the way this book came to him. Did you catch that? Yeah,
talk about that for a minute, because that was my favorite part of the interview.
I loved that part too. So Dean Koontz spends 5-6 days a week writing for hours and hours.
He is prolific. I mean, all the knocks on him are Dean Koontz is only known for not being Stephen King. And it's I personally... I'm not a big Stephen King. I'm not a big Stephen King fan. I'm not the biggest Dean Koontz fan either, but I probably like Dean Koontz's writings better than Stephen King most of the time.
He can end a story.
That's it, right? I just think he's better at ending stories. The biggest knock on him is that he doesn't, and he knows this himself, he doesn't write complex villains. But in his philosophy, he's well, evil's kind of silly and stupid, and so I make my villains silly and stupid. But that's the biggest knock on him that I would agree with. But he's... You were saying, it came to him in a dream or something?
This one didn't. He said he's only had that happen one time, and that was a different book. Can't remember which one. But this one, he was writing something else. And all of a sudden he heard, "My name is Odd Thomas, and I see dead people." And he was like, oh, I have to write this down. And he did. And he just started writing the story. That was the first line of the book. And he just went from there and took off with it. And he also, when he ended the series, was I felt like I was turning my back on a friend. I love Odd. I love everything about him. And I think you see Christian ideas in this that aren't super overt either, the humility of Odd and the fact that he's this is a gift and I have to use it. His focus isn't on worldly things, obviously. He's a fry cook with nothing. His focus is on the gift that he's been given. And I don't know, all of that messaging, I think, really shines through, probably in the book more so. But also in the movie, I like his attitude towards it. What else did you pick up from
Dean Koontz also says that he heavily edits everything he writes. He writes first, and then he goes back and nitpicks down to every syllable. And he said when he wrote the first chapter of Odd Thomas, again, in the middle of writing something else, stopped what he's doing, wrote a whole chapter, so he didn't even have to edit it. Nope. So he's never had to do that before. It just came to him perfectly. It was really weird. But no, I like this. I think a lot of people, I think the criticisms from a Christian perspective are it's well, he's fighting demons, but he's not, just going around praying for people and casting demons out in that way. It's like it's a representation. It's a story where it takes the internal spiritual battle and externalizes it into literally fighting demons with, like in an external way. And the movie did that in a way that was a little weird, where at the end, when he's going after the shooter, the Bodox, who's not supposed to be able to physically harm him, or like grabbing him and holding him back and stuff like that. But I think that I think the point of this is that in a good Christian story, the reason that so many Christian stories suck is because what you have to do is you have to take the internal battle. That's what all good stories are, is taking an internal struggle and externalizing it and turning it into a metaphor, more so to speak. And I think that this story does it perfectly. I think the movie did it great. I think that Stephen Sommers added, the CGI'd explosions and all that stuff that he's known for on a budget, actually, compared to his other stuff, and made a compelling, fast-paced movie. Could have had a little bit more backstory, could have had a little bit better pacing, but I personally enjoy the crap out of this movie.
I do too. And I love that it's accessible to everybody. So often Christian stories, I'm sorry, but they're so, it's like a Hallmark movie, and not to knock on anybody who likes Hallmark movies. I'm sorry.
No, but they're not realistic movies in that way. They're way too Hallmark, and they end up taking away from the reality of evil, the reality of human nature, the reality of the struggles that we all go through. And Odd is, it's weird because he's like kind of a goody two shoes, but not in the way like Hallmark movies do it. It's just because he just lives a clean life and is just different, Exactly. But he's a relatable character in every other way, and he's got relatable friends. He's got, I can't remember the name of the character right now, but I love Willem Dafoe's portrayal of the cop in the movie, and
so good.
Yeah, it was
just a well done, good feeling, fun to watch movie.
It is. And then, obviously I'll ruin it a little bit by bringing up Anton Yelchin and the 27 Club and Mandalay Bay and stuff like that, but it is just weird connections that I had to point out. So
there are some weird connections, and again, it might seem like a stretch, but it's just like, but they're there.
My point is, if Hollywood is putting any predictive programming in this, it is 2017 Mandalay Bay. Like, I don't know what else to say. It was just so weird.
With Anton Yelchin's death, even, like, I don't know.
Again, the freaking book being almost the exact same thing is just odd. So
they can't be more creative than that.
So, well, I appreciate you coming on. I enjoy this movie. Do you have any closing remarks before we wrap this episode up?
No, I enjoyed this very much. Thanks for doing something a little different with me. And I loved it. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you guys for watching. I'll come back next week with, I don't know, something to black pill the crap out of all you guys. It'll be dark. It'll have satanic rituals or something like that you probably come to expect from the show. But please go out, watch Odd Thomas, go watch Dark Ocean, click all the links in the description below. And until next time, keep it real.